According to a report released in 2013 on homelessness, at least 200,000 Canadians experience homelessness each year in Canada, and at least 50,000 Canadians are part of the hidden homeless and on any given night. Joining me today to talk a little further about this growing problem in our country are three amazing people who have devoted their lives to serving those in the margins of our community. Corinne Hardy is the Executive Director of Helping Hand Street Mission. Jesse Sudirigo, did I get it right? Sudirigo, I'm sorry, is the Manager of Street Involved Services at Yonge Street Mission. And Dion Oxford is Mission Strategist of Salvation Army's homeless shelters in Toronto. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
It really is an honor to sit with all of you. I respect all of you and just how you've been able to really tackle such a big issue, and it can be overwhelming at times. I want to start off with the federal budget. So we, heard about the federal budget a couple of weeks ago. There was an announcement that about $11.2 billion would be designated to affordable housing, homelessness issues. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, it's the first time in a while that we've seen the federal government actually designate such a large amount of money to this issue. Is it going to happen? Is it going to work?
I would say, homelessness did begin about 25 years ago because government started to pull out the way we understand homelessness today. So I think, yes, this is a great sign that we're trying to get back to where we've come from. $11 billion over 11 years is a lot of money. I mean, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's not going to solve the problem. But I think it's a good start. So last night, for example, in Toronto, the Salvation Army was running about 600 beds, shelter beds for folks who are homeless, men and women, and they were all full. And out of the 60 or so shelters in Toronto altogether, about 4,000 people last night were living in shelters. So to date, we haven't seen the housing. I guess for those of us who have been around for a long time, a little skeptical, but when we see the housing, we'll believe that we're heading in the right direction.
What are some of the issues we need to understand when it comes to, especially this issue of hidden homelessness? Because I think that's something that fascinates me because, you can literally be sitting beside somebody at work in your cubicle next to you who is couch surfing, who cannot pay the rent. What do we need to understand about this issue, Corinne?
I think we need to understand the security that comes in knowing that you have a place of your own. And we need to combat the attitudes that perhaps people who don't understand that comes in, how that impacts people. For example, as some people may think that if you've got a couch to sleep on, you're good, and not consider that homelessness. But the fact is, it's undignified, and it's not garnering respect for the individual. So we need to combat the attitudes of others, whether it's family members. I mean, to not understand that, it's great that family can be supportive and offer someone a couch to sleep on, but it's not enabling them and giving them the independence that they need. And that in itself is such an obstacle for people who are struggling in that way.
Yeah. I work with specifically with street-involved youth in Toronto, and a lot of them some of them you can't tell that they're homeless. They're wearing some Jordans sometimes. They're decked out pretty well, but they might wear it every day. You know what I mean? And you just don't know. And a lot of it is even despite the fact that they might be, number one, they're either couch surfing, they're in a shelter, or they're living rough on the streets, right? But if hidden homelessness occurs a lot of the times, the part that actually affects them a lot is the fact that they have no vantage point, to go to. For me, I have my father. I had a plumbing problem the other day, and who do I call? You know what I'm saying? I call my dad. I can have a vantage point to something, and so a lot of these youth, there's just no centering, no anchoring a lot of that times. And that is hugely disruptive in making any kind of progress in life. So that's kind of it feels intangible, but it's actually really significant in any kind of progress, especially as a youth.
So I'm hearing this and I'm feeling overwhelmed as a Canadian who cares about the fact that people don't have a home. And so when you hear this, it's like, okay, this seems so insurmountable. Like, how do I actually tackle this? How do you, all of you are on the front lines of this. How do you deal with this? How do you tackle it every single day?
Yeah. Well, just to jump in a little bit, I think that when going back to your original question about all that money that's going in, when you think about Toronto, though, it has a lot of money to begin with, right? And maybe not enough dollars from the government coming into it, but in a way, it's how it's used is the main question. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is it going to be channeled and effectively used? I think we need to leverage the capacity that we already have and actually look at that first. What are we doing it right? Because if we keep on putting money into solutions that we create that are not actually effective or not coordinated, for example, like everyone doing the same things in their own little silos. And so, for example, in the Young Street Mission, we're really trying to emphasize how can we leverage each other's assets within a community, whether we're a part of the same organization or not, in order to actually increase our capacity as like a collective impact, as they call it these days, for us to actually engage the problem. So I think that is more of an issue, and once we get that, then we can channel the money through an effective, coordinated strategy.
I also like the attitude change comment that I heard earlier too. Like, even talking about people as homeless people as opposed to people experiencing homelessness. That's a big attitude change. If we talk about a homeless person, the homelessness becomes sometimes the whole curriculum vitae of that human being. As opposed to a person experiencing homelessness, homelessness just becomes then one part of who they are. So all the people that are coming in through the doors of our shelters or living on the streets or living in their cars or sleeping on couches, they're real people with real red blood running through their veins. And the church needs to start there with this attitude change about who are the people and recognize it's not an us and them question. We're all in this thing together. Nobody's different. We're all created in the image of God. We all have God likeness in us. And it's not about fixing those people's problems. We're all together.
Well said. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back. And when we return, I want to talk about solutions, ways that you have seen your agencies work to tackle this issue of hidden homelessness. We'll be right back.